In her castle, Queen Xenia receives a visit from two members of the Order of Souls, known as Prince Nikolai and Lord Valerian. During the meeting, the queen reveals that a demonic grimoire, known as the Book of Lazarus, has been stolen by someone who summoned the demon Lord Bazo, one of the 7 infernal lords, the most powerful species among evil beings. While trying to understand how this happened, Valerian reveals that the Book of Lazarus needed to be constantly fed with human blood, meaning that the Guardian must have failed to keep the ritual active. In order to have a chance to contain the Book of Lazarus again, the group realizes that they can use the blood of Darius, the patriarch of the family of guardians of the artifact, who trained his children their entire lives to eliminate demons. Finally, the members of the court reveal that in order to have a chance to defeat this enemy, the members of the Order of Souls must ask for the help of Her Majesty Diana, who is part of the same family whose lineage has protected Lazarus' book for decades. Therefore, Xenia asks the duo to prepare their armies to hunt down that creature. Hours later, General Isaac receives a call from his superior at the Federal Department, who says they are about to embark on an emergency mission. Quickly, the federal agent guides the general to access information about the Book of Lazarus, and after obtaining all the necessary information, he says that they will need to start an operation in search of the infernal artifact. In addition, the chief promises that if he succeeds in completing this operation, Isaac will receive a huge sum of money, and to ensure there is no chance of failure, the general decides to call on his best soldier, who has a history of being a true war machine. Far away, at his home, veteran Skylar practices throwing shurikens blindfolded. At the end of his training, the man receives a visit from a general from the military base, who delivers a document containing information from Lazarus' book. Soon after, Skylar receives a call from Isaac, and after praising the soldier's performance, the general states that they will pay a total of 10 million euros if the man completes his mission. This payment catches the veteran's attention, and before accepting the invitation, he says that he prefers to work alongside his own men, as this will give him more control over the operation. Despite knowing that the mission is top secret, Isaac agrees to the condition, and Skylar says goodbye to the soldiers. Sometime later, Valerian meets with his sister Miranda in a hideout, along with a pair of soldiers. While the men watch the news, Valerian questions whether the woman really wants to help them on this mission, since she will be a target for carrying the blood of Darius, the patriarch of the family of guardians of the Book of Lazarus. Miranda then replies that she knows how to take care of herself and scolds the cultist for not accepting Queen Xenia's proposal. At that moment, it is revealed that the members of the Order of Souls have decided to partner with the military, as they have crucial information to deal with Bazo and will not need to eliminate innocent people as they would in the Queen's plan. Suddenly, the group hears someone knocking on the door, and while one of the soldiers goes to answer it, Miranda decides to go to the bathroom. As soon as he opens the door, the soldier is surprised by Bazo, who strikes him with his machete, eliminating the man instantly. With his first victim, the demon lord enters the room, and at the same time, Valerian has a strange feeling and gets up from his chair. Confused, the soldier asks where the man is going, and he says that something is wrong. Before he can react, the soldier is surprised by one of Bazo's demons, who jumps on him, while another one attacks Valerian with his machete. At the same time, Miranda is caught by one of the creatures, who drags her across the floor and finishes her off right there. In a rage, Valerian pushes the monster away and throws his hatchet to knock it down. Soon after, the man is attacked by the hooded creature, and while dodging its blows, he trips it. Thanks to this, Valerian manages to finish off the monster with its own weapon, and at that moment, a third demon appears in front of him. In one swift movement, the cultist slashes the creature's belly, and it falls to the ground. Confident in his ability, Valerian walks up to Bazo and says he will defeat him alone. With that, the man rushes toward the demon lord, but he is easily knocked down with a punch, and without mercy, the monster finishes off his opponent with his machete. Far away, two campers are packing up their gear in the middle of the forest, but suddenly, Naomi hears a buzzing sound in her hearing aid, which has run out of batteries. The woman asks her friend to fetch some spare batteries from the car, as well as an extra lighter, since the one they brought is not working. However, on the way to the vehicle, she comes across Bazo holding a human head and runs away in despair. Trying to prevent Naomi from being attacked, the woman runs to warn her, but before she can do so, she is struck by the creature's hatchet and falls to the ground, already lifeless. This scene leaves Naomi in a state of panic, causing her to flee desperately through the forest. After retrieving his weapon from the victim's body, Bazo runs to capture the other camper, who is grabbed by the ankle and dragged several meters across the ground. Minutes later, Naomi wakes up in front of the creature, who strikes her body several times with his hatchet. With another victim eliminated, Bazo leaves the forest carrying the woman's body, and far away, Queen Xenia talks to her advisors in the castle. As they remember that Bazo is on the loose and in possession of Lazarus' book, the group tries to find a way to deal with the situation and decides to ask the Imperial team for help to work with Diana. At the same time, Skylar opens the package he received from the general and discovers that the envelope contained only a kind of flash drive. The soldier quickly inspects the contents on his computer, and after analyzing all the information about Bazo and Lazarus' book, he calls Isaac, ordering his men to prepare for the mission. Far away, the demon lord carries one of his victims in a net, and after lifting her with his brute strength, he throws the woman into a large hole in the ground. Hours later, Skylar and his men prepare their equipment for the mission, and after explaining the team's target, the leader says they need to surround and eliminate Bazo as soon as possible. At the beginning of the mission, the veteran contacts Echo, who begins to track the group via one of the satellites. While the soldiers walk through the region in search of the demon, two of the victims in the hole created by Bazo wake up and explain to each other how they ended up in that place. The survivor then reveals that her husband is an extremely wealthy and powerful man, so she believes that someone will soon come to rescue them. At the same time, the squad's sniper spots Bazo wandering through the forest and decides to alert the group. At that moment, Echo and Isaac notice that something seems strange, and as soon as the drone loses signal, the general realizes that the mercenaries are in a trap. Trying to eliminate the creature, the sniper fires his shot, but Bazo dodges it, and before he can shoot again, he loses sight of his target. Soon after, the soldier is surprised by the demon lord, who appears right behind him and eliminates him in seconds, piercing his face with his own hands. Back at the hole, the survivors try to use their bodies as support to climb out, but without success, and suddenly, Bazo appears. To make his victims even more frightened, the creature begins to throw more dirt into the hole with a shovel, but when he senses the soldiers approaching, he sets out to attack them. In the middle of the forest, Axel and his teammate Galmar walk through the area in search of the creature, when suddenly, they are surprised by Bazo, who easily disarms the pair. Trying to prevent themselves from being eliminated, the mercenaries attack their enemy with hand-to-hand combat, but they are constantly knocked down by the demon, who begins to taunt them. In a rage, Axel tries to perform a fighting maneuver, but Bazo manages to dodge it and begins to stomp on the soldier's body repeatedly. Wanting to save his friend, Galmar attacks the devilish clown, but he is easily hit by several blade strikes and ends up losing his strength. With one of the men down, Bazo slowly walks over to Axel and finishes him off with his blade, delivering a powerful blow to his chest. Soon after, the creature approaches Galmar, and realizing that he only has a few seconds left to live, the man crawls to his weapon and tries to shoot at the creature. What he didn't realize was that his magazine had already been removed, and after blocking the single shot with his knife, Bazo strikes the mercenary in the neck. This causes Galmar to fall into a state of complete despair, and taking advantage of the fact that his opponent no longer has the strength to fight, the demonic lord decides to finish him off. At the same time, the survivors talk in the crater in the middle of the forest, and realizing that she will not last much longer, the wounded woman decides to record a video for her daughter. However, the poor victim does not have enough strength and suddenly loses her life, leaving the other woman completely devastated. Despite feeling terrible about what she is about to do, the woman uses her colleague's body to climb out of the crater, managing to escape. In the middle of the forest, in one of his territories, Bazo cuts the soldiers' bodies into several pieces, and after tormenting one of his victims in the most terrifying ways possible, he finishes her off by setting her cage on fire. Nearby, Princess Diana appears in the region with two of her guards, Dmitri and Sergei, and after saying goodbye to her horse, she enters the forest in search of her enemy, so that she can defeat the evil forces once and for all and recover Lazarus' book. The problem is that Bazo is gaining more and more power, and after using the infernal grimoire once again, he manages to reanimate Galmar's body, who sets out in search of new targets. Soon after, the survivor finds her friend's body lying on the ground, and upon realizing that the woman is no longer alive, she screams in despair. Suddenly, the victim has her head destroyed by a shot from Sergei, and the action is reprimanded by Diana and Dmitri, who confiscate his weapon. Despite this confusion, the Imperial members of the Order of Souls continue through the forest in search of Bazo, when they are surprised by Skylar, who holds the princess at gunpoint. Without wasting any time, Diana frees herself with a fighting maneuver and pushes the man against the tree, asking why he is there. At that moment, the group realizes that they are all on the same side, and in order to have an even better chance of recovering Lazarus' book, the trio tries to convince him to work together. However, Skylar refuses to do so and continues on his way through the forest. Irritated, Dimitri tries to shout to convince him, but is stopped by Diana, who says that if the man doesn't want to help them, they can use him as bait to capture the clown. Minutes later, Skylar finds a destroyed cabin in the middle of the forest, and while investigating the site, he is surprised by Galmar, who attacks him. After knocking down his target, the zombie soldier tries to pin his neck to the ground, but the fighter manages to break free, and after knocking him down, he runs away. During his escape, Skylar ends up colliding with one of the trees, causing him to fall to the ground. Thanks to this delay, Galmar manages to catch up with his target, who flees desperately through the forest while being pursued by the possessed soldier. Trying to find a way to escape, Skylar begins to climb one of the trees, but his foot ends up being grabbed, causing him to fall to the ground. At that moment, Diana appears with her warriors, and after throwing Galmar away, she kicks him. Soon after, Dimitri and Sergei immobilize the creature, and noticing that the Princess of the Order of Souls is about to finish off his friend, Skylar despairs and runs to stop her. Thanks to this distraction, Galmar manages to free himself from the warriors and jumps on Diana, biting her neck. To prevent the trio from being attacked, the soldier whistles to get the monster's attention, and it begins to chase him. Despite noticing that his princess is injured, Dimitri decides to help the combatant and leaves with Sergei. Amidst the frantic chase through the forest, Skylar manages to surround Galmar with the two warriors, and after a joint maneuver, they finally immobilize the creature, tying it to one of the trees. After that, Dimitri and Sergei explain the prophecy from Lazarus' book to Skylar, and realizing the urgency of the situation, he decides to help them. At that moment, the group notices that Diana has not yet been able to reach them, and they decide to return to check what happened. Nearby, the princess begins to feel weak, and realizing that she will not survive the wound to her neck, she stores her blood in a vial so that the plan can still be carried out. Soon after, Dimitri and Sergei find Diana lying on the ground, and after throwing the vial at them, she bids farewell to her companions. Panicked at witnessing the loss of her majesty, Dimitri begins to cry, and to end the suffering of the young woman, who is being affected by the infection from Galmar's bite, Skylar finishes her off with his weapon. Sometime later, the trio walks through the region as they come across the remains of Bazo's victims, and they devise a plan to deal with the army of the possessed. The warriors explain that Skylar will serve as bait to draw everyone's attention, while they try to recover Lazarus' book to contain the creature's demonic powers. At that moment, the soldier receives a call from Isaac, and now that they are finally able to communicate again, he asks what is going on. However, Skylar reveals that the entire team has been eliminated by Bazo, and before they can continue the conversation, the signal is cut off once again. Now the trio must follow through with the plan, and as they walk down a road, they are surprised by Bazo's spirit, who ends up possessing Sergei. Trying to destabilize his enemies, the clown begins to berate them for the mistakes they made in the past, but the duo is not intimidated and threatens to destroy him. The spirit then leaves Sergei's body, who is comforted by his team, and now that they have regained control, they continue their mission. While walking through the forest in search of their enemies, Skylar finds a lost man, and as they approach him, the survivor screams in despair, saying that Bazo has devoured his hands. Trying to help him, the trio carries the man away from that area, but halfway there, the team is surprised by Bazo. So that they can fight the demon lord more easily, Skylar orders the survivor to flee, and as the man runs away, the creature conjures his possessed victims to chase them. Sergei quickly draws the zombies' attention and flees toward the forest, pursued by them. Before he can react, Dimitri is struck by Bazo's hatchet, and the blow is so powerful that the man is split in half. Despite being extremely frightened, Skylar does not give up and takes the warrior's bow and arrow to defeat his enemy. In the middle of the forest, Sergei is cornered by two possessed creatures, and using his sword and axe, he fights his enemies. At that moment, the warrior ends up being immobilized by the creatures, and in order not to be eliminated, he performs a maneuver to free himself. Soon after, a third monster appears to attack him, but Sergei is not intimidated and defeats it with a single blow. However, just as he is about to leave, the man is surprised by the demonic zombie, who jumps towards him but is quickly knocked down by a combat maneuver. To finish it off, Sergei strikes with his axe, and trying to take advantage of the distraction, one of the creatures jumps on the back of its target. Despite this, the warrior easily breaks free and eliminates the possessed monster with his weapon. This wave of attacks causes an outbreak of fury in Bazo's creatures, who roar throughout the forest, entering a state of uncontrollability. Soon after, Skylar is surprised by countless possessed creatures, and using his bow and arrow, he faces each one of them. Realizing that his zombies are not enough, Bazo decides to call on another creature, one with even greater agility, but the soldier does not care and destroys his opponent. At that moment, Skylar is surprised by another zombie, who tries to attack him from behind, but he reacts quickly, and after knocking the creature down, he finishes it off with his bow. Tired of it all, Bazo sets out to take down the man, and in order to finish him off once and for all, he calls on his 2 monster jailers. With that, the demon lord leaves, and without wasting any time, Skylar picks up a blade from the ground and goes after his enemies. After destroying one of the monsters with a combat maneuver, the soldier dodges the other creature's attacks and hits its leg. Now that he has managed to take down his target, Skylar finishes him off with a blow to the chest with his blade and sets off to look for Bazo. When he comes across the demonic lord walking in the middle of the forest, the soldier hides to observe him, but as soon as he sees Lazarus' book in his hands, he sets out to confront the creature. However, Bazo was already aware of his presence, and after knocking Skylar to the ground, he throws him against one of the trees. Despite being extremely tired, the soldier continues to try to defeat his enemy, but the demon lord only continues to hurt him more and more, causing several fractures in his body. At that moment, the vial with Diana's blood falls to the ground, and with his opponent incapacitated, Bazo touches his face, causing his soul to begin to be removed from his body. However, before he can do so, the demon lord is struck from behind by Galmar, who strikes him with a blade containing Diana's blood. Thanks to this, Bazo is defeated once and for all, and his existence is imprisoned back in Lazarus' book. Frightened, Skylar asks Galmar not to attack him, but despite being possessed, the man's willpower manages to overcome the possession, and he helps his friend to his feet. Taking advantage of their victory, the leader contacts Isaac by radio to inform him that his mission has been completed and orders the general to transfer his payment. Izaki and his soldiers transfer the sum of 10 million euros, and before leaving, the mercenary pours the contents of Diana's bottle onto Lazaro's book, which absorbs the liquid instantly. With the curse under control, Skylar heads for the getaway vehicle with his friend and is happy to discover that from now on, they will live their lives as multimillionaires. However, in the middle of the forest, Diana's body enters a state of regeneration, and after her wounds are healed, the princess opens her eyes, revealing that the great curse of Lazarus' book is far from over.